Well, hello. Thank you for joining me. As you know, the Marantz Cinema 30 has now been revealed and it's not available yet to the public. You can pre-order it now though, but let's go over some of the differences between its predecessor, the SR8015, because there's a lot of similarities, but there are some differences. So let's just hop online and check them out. All right, this is taken from the actual Marantz website. So I would imagine that all the information that I am seeing is accurate since it is on their own website. Because I did try and check some other websites to see if there was an easier way to compare and contrast the two. But what I found is that some of the information that should have been with the SR8015 wasn't, and vice versa. So yeah, hopefully we got all the information that we need from Marantz themselves. Okay, but before we get into the specs, right out the gate, I'm going to tell you the Cinema 30 is not cheap because technically this is going to be Marantz's flagship AVR. They do have the AV10, which is a preamp processor, which has no amplifiers inside. It is strictly a preamp processor, and that's $7,000. So that's technically their flagship, right? But as far as AVRs are concerned, where you have amplification inside and pre-out so that you can add external amps if you so choose, the Cinema 30 is their new flagship, and it's $4,500. Wow, that's a lot. But as you can see on the left-hand side, you can get the Marantz SR8015, which is still an incredible AVR. It's got all the future-proof things that you would expect nowadays so that you can have an AVR that lasts you for many years to come. So it's still a really good AVR. And as you can see now, because the Cinema 30 is about to come out, you can get the 8015 for $24.99 US dollars. But I've even seen it on sale for less. So be on the lookout if you're wanting to get the SR8015, because it is still going to be a fantastic solution to an all-in-one, very powerful, very versatile AVR. But for now, the details about the power amps with the SR8015 is in the section called specifications, and in the Cinema 30, it's in the section called power amplifier. Of course, it's different, so I'll just do my best and trying to compare all the things side by side. But as you can see, the Cinema 30 is pretty much no different than the SR8015 when it comes to power. The number of power amps inside the chassis itself is 11 in both units. And also the power rating is the same. Into an 8 ohm load, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, 2 channels driven, you get 140 watts of class AB amplification. Let's go into multi-channel surround technologies. As far as DTS is concerned, they both support DTS HD Master Audio, DTS-X. They both do not support DTS Neo X, but they both support DTS Neural X Upmixer and DTS Virtual X, which is when your configuration itself only has ear level speakers, no height channels whatsoever. So DTS Virtual X will try and simulate height effects that actually sound like they're up above by setting delays on particular sounds that should be in the high channels. Whereas DTS Neural X is their up mixer. So if you do indeed have height channels, either 2 or 4, 6, whatever, and you're listening to a native source that is mixed in either 5.1 or 7.1, then DTS Neural X is going to take into account that you do have high channels, and it's going to put effects in those high channels, even though it wasn't mixed that way. So that's the difference between Neural X and Virtual X, just so you know. They do both support IMAX Enhanced, so that's good. If and when Disney Plus comes out with that IMAX Enhanced signature sound by DTS, which they've been promising for a very long time. So if you have an SR8015 or a Cinema 30, you will be able to experience the highest audio quality on Disney Plus when they finally roll that out. All right, as far as Dolby is concerned, Dolby True HD, Dolby Atmos, of course, Dolby Atmos height virtualization. Again, that's just like DTS Virtual X, where you only have ear level speakers and it does some cool delay trickery to make you think that you're actually hearing some height effects when in fact you don't actually have height speakers. As you can see here though, Dolby Atmos Music, that's a new feature that is very specific. I mean, regardless if you have an Apple TV 4K and it's hooked up to your Cinema 30 or SR8015, you're going to get Dolby Atmos music. So maybe it's just a little bit better optimized for Dolby Atmos music with the Cinema 30. So that's possibly one thing you might want to consider if you're thinking of saving money with the SR8015 or going with the newer Cinema 30. They both support Dolby Surround. They both support RO3D. Honestly, one thing I had to look up was the fact that the Cinema 30 supports Odyssey DSX, and apparently it stands for Odyssey Dynamic Surround Expansion. But at the same time, it kind of seems like it's an already older technology because it just adds either front wides or front heights to any system. I think this was implemented before Dolby Atmos or GTSX became more popular, just as another way to enhance your surround sound experience. But it doesn't add both front height and front wide channels. It's either or. I'm a little bit confused by that personally, but just wanted to let you know, just in case maybe you saw that and you're like, well, what the heck is Odyssey DSX? But yeah, it just seems like it's an outdated format already. Okay, multi-channel stereo, they both support. The max number of processing channels is 13.2 in the SR8015 and 13.4 in the Cinema 30. Just like with the Cinema 50, Cinema 40, the newer Denon X3800H, 4800H, 6800H, they all now support 4 subwoofers. And obviously so does the Cinema 30. Again, these two sections aren't broken down exactly the same on both of these units, but pretty much the same things we're looking at. Copper-plated chassis. They both have toroidal transformers, which is great. Gold-plated RCA terminals. That's kind of Marantz's signature look. Odyssey Multi-Q X32. And along with the newer Denon and Marantz products, the Cinema 30 now supports direct live room correction for an additional fee. The inputs and outputs have changed because the Cinema 30 has gotten rid of quite a few of your more legacy inputs. They just figure you're not really going to use it anymore because it's just antiquated technology. Composite inputs, the SR7015 has 4 + 1 and 2 composite outputs, whereas the Cinema 30 only has 2 inputs and no outputs whatsoever. Component in and out, SR7015 has 3 and 1, whereas the Cinema 30 has 1 input and no outputs. Because they just figure if you're going to be outputting any sort of video feed, it's probably going to be HDMI nowadays. Makes sense. 7 HDMI ins, 3 HDMI outs. SR8015 has 6 analog ins, whereas the Cinema 30 only has 3. So they cut that in half. Wow. Moving magnet phono in, yes to both. As far as digital inputs, they both still have 2 optical and 2 coax inputs. As far as multi-room analog outputs, those are still the same. They have 2 analog outputs and 0 digital outputs. Sorry, I just had to bring this up because this must be a typo because the Cinema 30 says the multi-channel preamp out is 7.2, which is wrong. Because as you can see on the back of the Cinema 30, you've got a full set of preamps. Front, center, surround, surround back, height 1, height 2, height 3, and or front wide. And you've got 4 independent RCA subwoofer outs. So I don't know, I guess just be aware that that must be a typo on Marantz's part because multi-channel is clearly 13.4 channels. And even right underneath it, it says subwoofer out 4 parentheses independent, which is really cool. The fact that you have 4 independent subwoofers that can be independently dialed in, that is awesome. So obviously if you're thinking about, or maybe don't even know that you're going to want 4 subwoofers in the future, you might want to go with the Cinema 30 because then you at least have that option. Because maybe you've been rocking 2 subwoofers for quite a while, but you just get to this point where you're like, you know what? I kind of want maybe not 4 gigantic subwoofers, but maybe you have 2 big beasts in the front and maybe you want some like bass shakers, like something smaller, like right behind the listening position, or you can have 4 big old subwoofers in each corner of the room, something like that. But that way it's always there. The option is always there just in case. So that way, if you indeed do want 4 subwoofers at some future date, you don't have to get a new receiver just to support that. So another thing to consider. But what I also don't get is that the SR8015 side also says multi-channel pre-out, yes, 11.2, but technically it's 13.2. So I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just discovering these typos with you. So if you're watching Marantz, you might want to get that updated. Another legacy thing that is gone from the Cinema 30 is this right here, the 7.1 multi-channel input section. The SR8015 does have that. Say if you have like a really nice 4K Blu-ray player, like an Oppo or something, where the DAC inside of that is phenomenal. Maybe you want to go 7.1 out of that straight into the Marantz, which will then feed it to the rest of your speakers. But something like that rarely happens. So I get why they kind of eliminated that from the newer Cinema 30. The SR8015 definitely has a lot more front inputs instead of having to do everything on the back of the unit. It's got analog audio, composite, HDMI, and USB, whereas the Cinema 30 only has USB. AM/FM tuner, yep. Just curious how many people actually use their AM/FM tuner on their receiver. I don't. Oh, okay. So down at the bottom of the Cinema 30 on the right-hand side, multi-channel pre-out, yes, 13.4. What does multi-channel preamp out mean then? Again, I am learning with you, folks. Some questions I have for Marantz. As far as HDMI is concerned, the Cinema 30 actually has one less HDMI input than the SR8015. The SR8015 has 7 HDMI inputs, and the Cinema 30 only has 6. So that's interesting that they put one less. And out of those 6 on the Cinema 30, 3 of them support 8K video signals. As far as HDCP 2.3, they both support that, so they are future-proof in that regard. They both have 2 HDMI outputs and 1 zone output as well. The SR8015 can convert analog video signals to HDMI, whereas the Cinema 30 cannot. Although again, you're not really going to run into that issue much because that's dealing with obsolete technologies at this point. They both support ARC and eARC. They both support HDR, HLG, Dolby Vision, HDR10+, Dynamic HDR. They both support your next-gen gaming features like auto low latency mode, variable refresh rate, quick frame transport. As far as network connectivity and music streaming, they obviously both support Bluetooth. You can even transmit Bluetooth signals to your Bluetooth headphones from these units. Network audio sharing, HEOS multi-room streaming. They both support DSD audio, FLAC HD 192 24-bit, Apple AirPlay 2, Spotify Connect, TuneIn, Pandora, SiriusXM. I don't see any mention of being Roon tested on the SR8015, whereas the Cinema 30 has been Roon tested. So if you're a Roon head, you might want to go with the Cinema 30. And honestly, I think that's about it as far as the specifications that you really need to care about. Obviously, the Cinema 30 has that newer, a little bit more minimalistic look to it, which I am a big fan of personally. The back panels are relatively the same, but you can see the SR8015 has many more inputs and outputs that are legacy. One thing I do wish that flagship AVRs did nowadays was kind of follow the Integra route, where the Integra DRX 8.4, their flagship AVR, not only has RCA pre-outs, but as you can see on the left-hand side, it also has XLR pre-outs, at least for the front LCR, for your left, center, and right channels, and subwoofers. Because by getting rid of a lot of the legacy inputs and outputs on the Cinema 30, you can see that they pretty much have room to put XLR pre-outs on there as well. Maybe if they shifted a few things around. Because if you're going to be paying $4,500, I would like that option, just because I prefer XLR pre-outs over RCA, because they are balanced outputs and RCA is unbalanced. But other than that, if you need 4 subwoofers, it's always great to have that option available to you. So the Cinema 30 might be your go-to in that case. Dirac Live and Dirac Bass Control, those are available on the Cinema 30, not on the SR8015. Not everybody needs all these legacy inputs and outputs that you get on the SR8015. Obviously, the processing chip is going to be a little bit better in the Cinema 30 just because it's newer, more refined. But $4,500 is steep. So I get it if that makes you hesitate in getting the latest and greatest, because that really is the only big difference, is the number of subwoofers it supports and Dirac Live and Dirac Bass Control. Other than that, the SR8015 is still a beast. So honestly, you can't go wrong with either, in my opinion. So I hope that cleared up some things for you, just in case you were considering upgrading. Maybe you already have the SR8015 and you wanted to upgrade to the Cinema 30, or you don't have anything close to either of these and were considering, well, should I go with the cheaper one because now it's a lot cheaper because the Cinema 30 is coming out, or should I go with the more expensive one? So I hope this helped in solidifying your choice. So with that being said, thank you for watching this breakdown of the specifications of the SR8015 and Cinema 30 from Marantz. And now it's your turn. Which one are you going to go for? Do you think $4,500 is worth it, given how similar it still is to the SR8015? Who out there among you is going to get the SR8015 now that it is only $2,500? Because come on, with all that it can do and all the future proofing that it already has built into it, $2,500 is a steal in 2024. And on that note, this world is crazy as it is already, so please be kind to each other out there. Don't just watch TV and movies on your SR8015 or Cinema 30, experience them. And of course, always be listening